My name is Michael Spath, and I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Center for Middle East Peace. We're a voice of conscience for peace, justice, human rights, and intercultural encounter. 12 of us who traveled to Palestine in a time of war. And many of our friends told us that we were foolish to do so, foolish to put ourselves in harm's way. But it was important to us, it was important to the 12 of us that we went, specifically at this time. You know, this was my 19th Solidarity Tour, and I've never canceled. I've never canceled, not once. And a number of you have been with me on these trips, and you know how important it is that we go and stand with our friends. And we just figured, the 12 of us, if we can't go now, when our friends, our Palestinian friends, but also our Jewish and Muslim voices of conscience, our Jewish voices of conscience, who are friends of ours in Palestine and Israel, if we can't go now, then when? It's important that we went to stand with them. You know, the word gets tossed around a lot. It's almost become like elevator music, but this is a time of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Genocide is the intentional extermination of a people. The intentional extermination of a people, a culture, a religion. And that's what's happening in Palestine. It's not, don't take my word for it. Take the word of any number of Holocaust and genocide scholars, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, secular. It doesn't matter. Take the word of the International Criminal Court. Take the word of a number of activists around the world. The time of genocide, the intentional extermination of a people. So it's important that we stand with them. The truth of the matter is that it's important. It's important that we're there and to hear from the people on the ground. So we had 18 meetings in 13 days. 18 meetings in the West Bank. We purposely stayed in the West Bank our entire time. We were in Hebron and in Jerusalem and in Bethlehem and in Ramallah and in Jericho. And we heard from Jewish and Christian and Muslim voices of conscience, religious leaders and political leaders and NGO leaders who are working for justice and human rights. The hotels in Bethlehem and in Ramallah, we were the only group there, the only even tour group there, those hotels. And so the hotel in Bethlehem opened special for us. We were the only group like ourselves in Jerusalem, in the city of Jerusalem, the only group like ours, and they opened the hotel especially for us, and it's one of the more prominent hotels in the old city. They opened because a group from America, a group from America came. And it was important that a group from America came because we're responsible for this genocide. I don't know how many times we heard that this is an American war. I mean, of course, it's an Israeli genocide of Palestinians, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. They call it a slow genocide in the West Bank, but it's a genocide nevertheless. And but it's also an American genocide. We're not just complicit anymore. We're active participants in the murder of children. Active participants in the murder of children as a people. So I don't even like to use the word complicit anymore because it's even more than that. We're criminally responsible. So again, it was important that they saw Americans standing with them. As our dear friend who was just with us this past year, Pastor Munther Isaac from Ramallah, he says, you know, we Palestinians, we're not asking where God is. We know where God is. He's under the rubble. We're asking where progressives are. I mean, we know about the conservatives. We're asking where progressives are. We're asking where Western countries are. We're asking where churches are. So don't preach to us, you people from America, about human rights. I mean, it's almost laughable. Don't preach to us about human rights, you folks in the West. And it's an indictment. So again, it was important that we from America were there. And so we went. Our little Indiana Center for Middle East Peace from Fort Wayne, We took $4,000 for our Palestinian partners. So Zubi Zubi at WEAM Palestinian Conflict Resolution Center in Bethlehem. Abdel Fattah Abu Sroor, who's Executive Director at the Arawad Cultural Arts Center in the Ida Refugee Camp in Bethlehem. Issa Amro, who's one of the Nobel Peace Prize nominees from Hebron. Daoud Nassar from the Tent of Nations Farm in the Bethlehem Hill Country. Mother Isaac in Ramallah Hope Church in Ramallah. Two more things, and I'm going to turn it over to Heath and Mariah and Luke and Zach and Pam. We took 15 quilts, and we have a group that meets every week called Peace Quilts. They meet throughout the year, and took 15 quilts and gave them to the people at Hope Lutheran Church in Bethlehem, Mother Isaac's church, and they were received enthusiastically. This is the third year now we've taken quilts. We've taken about 70 quilts over the last 3 years. They've been really received very, very enthusiastically. And three of our group, Pam in April, Heath a week before our trip, and then an Anglican priest, Fiona Hayworth from the UK. Heath worked at Tent of Nations Farm a week before our trip. Pam, about 10 days, 12 days in April, and Fiona, 2 weeks after our trip. They worked at Tent of Nations Farm doing various work, and I know that Heath is going to talk about that when he's here. That's what we did. That's what we did this time, and we're really delighted that you're all here, and I'm happy to turn the microphone over now to Heath, I think. We will have if you want to support our work, please sign up for our email list, and there'll be a box. There is a box in the back there if you'd like to make a contribution tonight. We'd sure like to receive a contribution from you, if possible. Thanks again for coming tonight.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everyone, for turning out and showing up, hearing our story here. On behalf of the group, proud as punch to be the first one to kick it off and tell our experience here. See, next slide, please. So, the Nassar family, the Ten of Nations, they called it, gave the title Ten of Nations back in 2001. This is one of the rocks they have decorated there at the farm. It's got different languages, and the foreign presence there is very important for the safety and the continuation of the farm. Next slide, please. I think we'll go into a little history, and then the little struggles I went through, legal system, and then right in the meat and potatoes of what I did when I volunteered there. So 1916, about 100 acres was acquired by the Nassars. 1924-25, this is very unusual. The family registered it when this area of land was in the British Mandate. That's unusual because that opens the door to paying taxes, being regulated and such. So it was unusual to register the land if you had at the time under this era. It was also under Jordanian administration. They also registered the land during that time, and not only did they register it, which was pretty rare, they still have all the paperwork and the deed, official deed to the land. So 1991, Israeli authorities declared all that land of the Nassars and all the land around it state land. And there's a number of ways they can go about doing that. They're under a handful of different rulings, all from the Ottoman Empire to British Mandate. So there's like 4 different subsets of rules that they're all trying to follow. Next slide, please. Nope.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hold the microphone.
All right, thanks, man. All right, so this slide is very wordy. This breaks a lot of rules for a slide. Okay. And when I put this together, I was like, well, I think I'm going to do this anyway and try to convey what the family's gone through to try to hold on to their land that they have legal deed to. So in '06, the Israeli Supreme Court ruled Nassers can go through re-registration process, okay? So that was 91, they claimed the land. Now we're in 2006, many years later. The Israeli, so they can go through it. That went through '06 to 2019. Delays required Nassers to reinitiate and re-register the process multiple times. You can imagine trying to deal with a lawyer. Thanks for bearing with me here through this. So 2019-22, 2 years of delays followed by re-registration committee. January 22nd, hearing held. Absentee property custodian representing the state didn't appear. They're getting 45 days, which is like crazy. Then May 22, postponed October 22, postponed November 22, hearing held, but the state didn't appear. So you kind of start to see this process of like, it's almost like designed to fail, or somebody's not coming that's supposed to be. Everyone shows up but one entity, usually. 23, committee pulls back on its previous decision dismissing a Palestinian objector. And then absentee custodian appears, says he doesn't know anything about the hearings. Okay, so then they give the family of the objector an opportunity to come. It just keeps going on and on and on. And then May and September 23, hearings, a number of witnesses testified, and then December 2023, big moment. That was when Dowd and the Nassers get to, testify, and this is a big moment, and it's canceled. So, and he was even in civil court when I was there. They had gone, and it got postponed. Just this continuation that just drags on. And you see this with just everyday life. They're just a continual grind. Things are just made very hard, and this is very expensive. Next slide, please. This is a mission. Refuse to be victims, refuse to hate, act on their faith, or they practice Christianity. And then they believe in justice. Okay, we just went through all that, all that stuff they had to go through, and they're still believing in the system, which is crazy. And then refuse to be the enemy. So that just shows you the resiliency of these people, the determination and the will to just carry on. Next, please. Now, when I was there, this is a picture I took of, you see in the top left, those are established olive trees. They don't need water anymore after 2 years. They don't need any more water. But these little guys, and they've got white things protecting them. We'd have to water those at this time 2 days a week. They had olives, grapes, almonds, various fruit trees, figs. Wheat wasn't going on when I was there, but was just before I was. Greenhouse. They're trying to do an aquaponic thing. They're collaborating with somebody over there to get that operation going, because the sustainability is a big part of the farm. Ducks, chickens, and love doves. And they have all this land tilled, and it drives me nuts. It's just rocky, and they're trying to walk through this, and I'm like, man, why? There's a lot of things when I was there. I was like, just kept my mouth shut and just took, did my thing. And after a while, you learn why what was going on was happening. So if they don't, during the Ottoman period, if they don't work the land for 3 years, they get confiscated. Okay. If there's too much vegetation on it, they can declare it as like a forest and protected lands. So, they work these areas between these newly planted trees, but you have to do that to make it appear like, that's kind of the rule to keep the land. And then they would prune these pine trees that were planted during the British Mandate. They aren't native, but they prune them to make sure they look maintained, natural areas, but not too wild to get like a forest. Next slide, please. Solar panels and water, they collect all the water on the farm through underground water tanks, and then they pump it into, when those get full, they pump them into tanks on roofs, and we use that to flush your toilet or take a shower. You get to take a shower once a week, and you flush the toilet once. And if you need to go number 2, you use a composting toilet. The solar outfit, I was kind of worried that I need my own solar or like battery bank or something. They got a top-notch solar system that's pretty awesome. So there was no trouble with electricity there. Thanks, please. So that's me with the pickaxe. That's proof I was working hard. And that was an area I was like, man, why is this like all, I wanted to bring it back. Once you took the bushes out, you could see like the terrace and the rocks stacked up beautifully and like some organization. And you're kind of thinking like, man, what in the world? Like, how'd this go fallow or whatever? Well, after October 7th, they weren't allowed to go on certain areas of the farm, or it wasn't safe to go there. So this sat for 3 years, and they'd slowly till it back in. Okay, sometimes they were warded off by settlers neighboring the farm, and but slowly, once they were able to till it, then we could go back in, and we had to tear these bushes out. And I think almost every bush has like thorns there. Kind of sucks. Even the grass is like, it looks like oats. It's not, I don't know, it's like precursor to oats, and those things get in you and stick. We mulch around the olive trees and fruit trees and grapes, the newly established ones, to keep the water in there. All right, next. Jerry Cans, watering day. My first day of watering, everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's watering day tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay, get ready for that. And then after the first day, I was like, oh, that's not too bad. And then, you're working those bushes and everything. And then the second day of watering comes up and you're like, man, I am kind of wore out. So you carry these things for quite a while. That's Christina I met. It's another cool thing with volunteering there. You meet people all over the world. Many beautiful people are just so awesome. But we're kind of paired together to work on the farm. That's the end of the day, so look pretty awesome and happy, but man, we were running ragged. Next, please. You get Sunday's day off, and we did some cool things, and it also brings other volunteers together. And this time we went to Hebron and Ramallah, Bedouin village. You can see off to the distance there's a settler village encroaching on the Bedouin village, and then Herbawi textile factory makes the kafiyas. Next, please. That's at the Bedouin village. That's a commemoration of one of the residents there was shot. Next, please. I've seen all kinds of cool wildlife on the farm. So, kind of when they retired and get more out, you see some really cool things. In this picture, you might not be able to see them. You've seen all these cool things. Next slide. There you go. That little rascal was on there, like all the time near the cave that I said on. Next, please. When I was watering, sometimes these little guys, lizards would, they're waiting for you to water, and then they go right into the soil. Next. All right, if you ever go there to volunteer, you get to see this like every night, and it's this amazing or even better. The sunsets are incredible. Some things to take away from it is just having grace and patience with people. It was awesome to meet other people around the world that had the same feelings about, peace, justice, and love. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. Yeah. That's all I got.
Great. Well, thanks again, everybody, for coming out and listening to our tale. It's hard to coalesce, basically 2 weeks of incredibly intense and amazing experience into a little presentation, but we'll attempt it. Bethlehem is not far from the Ten of Nations farm, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Bethlehem. This statue, this sculpture is in Bethlehem, specifically in the Ada refugee camp. The Ada refugee camp is not so much what you would think of a refugee camp with tents and UN services. It's basically a city. It's a bunch of structures, apartments like you see, houses built on top of each other, and that was founded after the Nakba. The Palestinians were exiled in 1948. Many of them came here. And the key you see on the top of this, we heard an interesting story that when the Palestinians were forced out of the territory that is now Israel, so many of them kept the keys to their homes that were confiscated, that people then moved into, that property that was taken. They held on to the keys to their homes out of the belief that they said, someday we'll return, someday we'll come back to our homes and our homeland. And this key represents that idea. If you go to the next slide here. It was hard to think about what we were going to say about this trip and to try to concentrate all this information. And Dr. Abdel Fattah Absaror is the director of the Al Rawat Cultural Arts Society in Bethlehem that Michael talked about a little bit. And he said, tell the truth. Just tell the truth about what you saw here. Go ahead, go to the next slide. And then one more. The organization that he founded, he got his doctorate in the United States, but decided to come back to Bethlehem to his parents' home in an Ada refugee camp. And he decided to turn his home into this center of dignity and empowerment, a place of community and community service where kids, young people could come and build up this idea of self-worth and dignity and empowerment that could fight back against this notion that you are not a full person, you are a second-class citizen. And so he has built this now 6-floor organization, and they do amazing things. They have dance and theater programs, cultural programs. Go ahead, go to the next slide. They have journalism training programs, robotics labs, a library, a computer lab. When he talked about the journalism training, he said, it's a deadly job, but it's a necessary one. Go ahead and go to the next slide. They have sports and recreation programs. The kickboxing was up at the top floor. None of us, I think, could compete with that or keep up with that, these little kids. But it was just really incredible to see this emphasis on we need to give these kids who are living in this place that UC Berkeley did a study, an Ada refugee camp is the most tear-gassed place on earth, the most tear-gassed square kilometer on earth. And this is where these kids are growing up. This is the situation they're growing up. And he said we need to give them some outlet, some creative outlet, some way to express and build up themselves so they know that they are God's children too. They are just as equal as anybody else. And they have their own dignity in a place where they're told they're not. Next slide. What we might notice here behind all the recreation is this wall. Go next slide. In this original picture, if you look through the keyhole, go to the next slide. These are the watchtowers, the sniper towers, the observation towers that border Ada and border Bethlehem. Next slide. In ancient times, you guys are familiar with the concept of a siege, where a city would have its walls all around, and an army would come and surround it to try to prohibit food, services, and water. And Bethlehem and the West Bank is very much in a reverse siege. The wall has been built around it to isolate it, to make life so difficult, to make travel so difficult, to make self-determination so difficult that people find life almost intolerable. And this is the situation that Al and Bethlehem are living in. And the organization B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, and Forensic Architecture partnered together. This is a really fascinating website. It's called Conquer and Divide, and it tracks development of the wall over time and the events that precipitated each stage. If you want to learn some more history about the wall, this is a great place to do it. It has whole 3D renderings and everything. Next slide. This is a map of what the wall looks like around the West Bank. Bethlehem's here at the bottom. All of the maroon areas are Israeli settlements, which are illegal according to international law. And you can see Israel, and the green line here is the border of Israel that's internationally recognized. But you see how far the red line goes beyond that, all the way into West Bank territory, and you see where it carves out areas seemingly erratically. Next slide. Here is some of the pictures of Bethlehem that things that are graffitied along the wall. There's a water cannon here above the WEAM Palestinian Conflict Transformation Center. That is a place completely dedicated to nonviolence and community building. There's barbed wire. You can see one of the original Banksy paintings here on the upper right. But this concept on the bottom right is kind of fundamental to what we heard so much over there. That this is not a religious conflict. This is not a cultural conflict. And Mazen Qamsiyeh, who Pam will talk about in a second, said in order to decide and figure out a solution to a problem, you have to have the diagnosis right. He said it's not religion, it's not cultural. This is about settler colonialism. It's about people being treated as second-class citizens. And this idea that justice delayed by impunity is justice denied to all is really fundamental. He said this is about justice, and we heard that so much over there. Next slide. From the top of Ada and from the top of the Al Rawat Center, you can see this word emblazoned on the wall. It's gigantic. You can see it from almost across the city. But this to me was so much about this area, this commitment to each other, and that, it really gave me a sense of when the stakes are so high, when your values are challenged so directly every single day, you kind of have no choice but just, it really forces you into, do I really believe in my values or not? Do I really believe in community and loving each other and peace building or not? Because you're really challenged with it every single day. The wall is illegal by international law. The United Nations has deemed it illegal. The International Court of Justice has deemed it illegal. The International Committee of the Red Cross has deemed it illegal. And one thing Mother Isaac said when he was here last September, who we met with over in Ramallah, was that this idea that if truth is silenced, if law means nothing, if genocide is live streamed and normalized, then no one is safe. This isn't just about what's happening over there. It's about what the world thinks about when we think about international law. And the wall is illegal because it restricts the freedom of movement, It restricts the right to work, it restricts access to land. You can see it in the wall around Bethlehem how, farmers, this agricultural traditional community, were separated from their land. It makes life so difficult to be able to live in any functional way. Paul Tillich was a Christian theologian who said sin is separation. And Howard Thurman, who was a mentor of King, wrote about the concept of separation and hatred. I just want to read this real quick as a kind of ending. He said, hatred often begins in a situation in which there is contact without fellowship, contact that is devoid of any of the primary overtures of warmth and fellow feeling and genuineness. Contacts without fellowship tend to express themselves in a kind of understanding that is strikingly unsympathetic. And when I think about the wall and this intentional separation, I think about this. That there's so much effort to intentionally separate people from developing relationships, from seeing each other's humanity. And one of the things that Dr. Absalor says, take away the occupation and we'll get along. We did for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. This situation of injustice is what is prohibiting good, amazing people from getting along and building a future together. And it was an incredible, incredible people to witness and an incredible situation to witness. So thank you very much.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. There we are. I'm going to talk about Mazen Kumsia and Jesse Chang. We spent the better part of one of our Bethlehem days with them at the Palestine Museum of Natural History and the Palestinian Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability. Mazen was born in Beit Zahor, which is a village on the edge of Bethlehem. He went on to study biology and genetics and then cytogenetics. And he taught in the U.S. at the University of Tennessee and Duke and Yale. He met Jesse over here. And after a well-established career in the U.S., he and Jesse moved back to Bethlehem in 2008, where they started the museum and the institute, using $250,000 of their own money for seed money on land from Bethlehem University, where he continues to teach and is a thesis advisor both there and at Berzit University. They're also full-time volunteer staff, so they live there full-time and have just devoted their whole lives to what they're doing there. And what they're about is all about resisting the occupation through science, environmental sustainability, preserving indigenous methods of growing food, and encouraging self-sufficient community. They're also good friends of Indiana Center. They were in Fort Wayne several years ago when Mazen spoke here, and every solidarity tour visits there, and one or two tours have even taken some scientific equipment that they needed because it's so hard to get things from the U.S. to Palestine. So, next slide. Mazen wrote the book called Popular Resistance in Palestine, A History of Hope and Empowerment, way back in 2010. He's been arrested at protests. He's had activist friends killed. And he said, the Zionists want us ignorant, totally obedient, non-questioning. They want to reduce our status as subhuman beings. They believe God chose them, and we, the natives, have no rights, no value. If we resist that, we liberate our minds and then can liberate our bodies. He continues, it was a slogan of the civil rights movement in the U.S. Free your mind and your ass will follow. Mazen always has a bit of a twinkle in his eye, and underlying everything he says is kind of this wry sense of humor, like nothing phases him, I don't think. He just always kind of has this chuckle ready to go. So the next slide. Every group visit starts with Mazen's diagnosis, like Zach was saying, of the disease that is displacement settler colonialism. And the symptoms of that disease are ecocide and genocide. And the therapy is resistance. Mazen says, everything is resistance. When I drink juice in Palestine, it's resistance because Israel doesn't want Palestinians living here at all. Eating, drinking, getting married, having children, growing your own vegetables, it's all resistance. And they're especially keen on Palestinians growing their own vegetables. It's both a practical and a symbolic thing. People expressing love for and their connection to the land while feeding themselves. And it links resistance to caring for the environment. So it also provides a psychological benefit. The land is everything. Mazen says, resistance is a form of therapy in any anti-colonial struggle. You also have to build sustainable communities, even under occupation. The next slide. Mazen asks, how do you make sure you have some form of food security, some system of agriculture, some sort of livable conditions? Well, you build a green wall or a green roof, or you create a fish pond. This way you don't have to buy from the Israelis as well. So they have terraced gardens, olive trees, fruit trees, a greenhouse growing native species of food plants, and a seed bank saving native fruit, vegetable, and flower seeds for the future that they're determined to be able to plant freely in the future. Students there research the habitat of wild animals and even provide rehab for wounded animals brought to them. They have a mobile museum caravan that travels to different communities and different schools. And every year they welcome hundreds of school children for hands-on educational programs, summer camps and day camps and things like that, on the grounds of the museum. The next slide. Their sustainability project includes aquaponics, which is, you probably know, but I needed to understand it better, so I'm going to tell you too. Raising fish in a fish tank that produce waste in the water, which turns into ammonia, and then good bacteria changes that ammonia into nitrates that plants can absorb, which then cleans and purifies the water, and that flows back down to the fish tank, and the cycle repeats. So they're trying to, like at the Nassar farm, Tent of Nations, they're working to get a hydroponic place going there too, so that they can maintain and produce their own food. So the next slide. Let's see, the next slide. There we go. A steady stream of volunteers from around the world helps keep all the projects going, not unlike Tent of Nations, except the work's not nearly as intense, I think. They have a composting toilet built by volunteers, and a volunteer also came with them with plans to build a biogas digester, an airtight system that breaks down organic waste without oxygen to produce biogas for fuel. And we saw this a few years ago when we were there. They were experimenting then with using biogas for cooking. And he and Jesse are creating an example of sustainable living that's a model not only for Palestinians, but for all of us. Next slide. So after a tour of the grounds and those projects, there's lunch together in the shade. And that day, volunteers from Ireland prepared our lunch. So that was fun too, to talk with them. Okay, now the next slide. A large building adjoining the current grounds was recently donated by Catholic nuns who no longer use the building under the auspices of the Bethlehem University. It's becoming the Palestinian Museum of Natural History, the new and improved one. They were in the process of remodeling and starting to install exhibits when we were there in June. And we got to tour the space. So there's 3 floors of what will be interactive displays, like in a state-of-the-art facility. It's as though there's no occupation going on when you're there. They're just very dedicated to creating new ways and keeping life as normal there as possible. So, in the next slide, some displays were already up and ready to go when we walked through, but others were being installed, and some were just sitting in boxes along the walls. So they have insect collections of native species, functional handmade objects like baskets and farm tools, historic clothing, and catalogs of native plants, as well as the political history. And also, I didn't put in a slide of this, but I probably should have, but they were too hard to read from a distance, of questions for you to think about as you go through that were very looking at things that we don't usually do in the U.S. So that was helpful. And then the next one. Mazen and Jesse are also staying incredibly busy traveling around the world, where Mazen gives lectures and forges research and social links with major universities. And a couple of his past talks, for example, decolonizing minds, lands, and the environment in Palestine, and genocide and ecocide, the interconnected crimes against humanity and nature. And I think that smile of his on the right is what you commonly see when he said something and you're not sure if he's joking or if he's just whether he's pulling your leg a little or but he's that smile. So the next slide is the last one. There should have been one before this. Oh, one's missing. Anyway, it was just a picture of Mazen standing under some flowering pink trees where, and it's a pic from the website for the Institute about how he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2025 in recognition of his 5 decades of activism, nonviolent activism, and human rights advocacy and environmental sustainability. And then recently, he and Jesse both were just awarded the 2026 War Abolisher Couple Award by World Beyond War in recognition of their lifelong commitment to peace building through popular resistance, education, environmental conservation, and community engagement. And then the last thing I want to share is another quote from Mazen that kind of sums up what he and Jesse are about and what I want to be about and maybe what we all need to be about. And he said that all the major social changes in history have been achieved through people getting their act together. Women's rights, civil rights in the U.S., ending the Vietnam War, ending apartheid in South Africa, they all happened because enough people woke up and said, enough of this, let's do something.
First off, I just want to say a quick thank you to Indiana Center for the Least Peace for organizing the trip, and to Michael and Pam specifically. They really had to talk me into going. I was a little hesitant, and thanks to all my friends and family out there who supported me. Now I can't imagine having not gone. It was absolutely the trip of a lifetime and changed me. And I'm really hoping to kind of guide you through what we saw today. The best way I know to talk about my segment, which is talking about Hebron, is to just take you through what we saw all the way from this picture where I was on the bus on the way there, seeing lots of barriers surrounding Hebron. And as I talk about Hebron, please picture Fort Wayne, because I actually looked up the population. It's similar enough in population. We have a lot more land spread, but as far as the number of people, it's pretty similar. So if you could picture Fort Wayne as I'm talking, imagine 21 checkpoints going in and out of Fort Wayne, where you have to show your passport or your many different IDs that are required to go to travel around if you are a Palestinian. You see some cars parked there on the side. Maybe they had to stop there and then walk the rest of the way. And all along the way you see those flags, the Israeli flags that kind of where they put up and try to stake their territory, all marked with the Star of David, because Israel's not really shy about the fact that they want to make Israel a Jewish state. And so they are really pushing out Palestinians any which way they can. So they put all these checkpoints up, all in the name of security. But really, like Zach talked about, its main goal is to make life as difficult, hard, horrible for Palestinians as possible, so that they either move on their own, are forced out, and you've obviously heard about settler violence and people actually dying at the hands of settlers and Israeli military. So, so you see this on your way in. This is kind of on the way to Hebron. Next slide. Oh, thanks. So also, Zach already kind of pointed out these watchtowers that are everywhere, where you can imagine snipers up there watching, but also just chock full of video surveillance, audio surveillance. You really can't go anywhere without being surveilled and recorded. I think you can click one more time. And yeah, just again, fencing with the flags everywhere, just as a reminder, as if Palestinians didn't know who was in control over there. Next, please. And we saw that. So after we got off our bus, you can see kind of a little trail behind the olive tree on your left in the back. We walked along that trail up to our first stop, which was Issa Amro's house. Issa Amro is a Palestinian activist, and he really is a proponent of nonviolence, and has done a lot there. I'll talk about him more in a minute. But coming upon this was our first site that we saw. So imagine your backyard, maybe on the edge of Fort Wayne, where you have a little bigger space and some trees, and you come home and you find someone trying to steal your water source. So there is a natural spring in the middle where they are excavating around, and the settler neighbors decided that God deemed it should be theirs. And they thought it was then a religious spring, and so they went down and started excavating to just take it. So as we were walking up, Issa started video recording and telling him he was going to call the authorities, which the authorities were obviously in the know. There were cameras around everywhere. But he was calling to report because documenting is really the only action that you can take over there against such violence, earth violence, I guess. So yeah, there was a flag, one of the flags that we see everywhere planted on the other side of that olive tree. So he let them know, he let the neighbor know whose yard that was, and the neighbor came out and also started recording. But this is not an uncommon sight. People just come on your land, try to claim it for their own, and there's not really much recourse you can take. I asked Issa later, what kind of action can you take besides calling the authorities, which are on the side of the settlers? Can't you go down maybe at night and fill in the dirt? And they would get tired of having to dig and you're filling in, and he said there's no way because there's collective punishment. If he did that, their entire neighborhood would be punished for even filling in the dirt on their own land. So the only recourse is using their devices to record, phones. They put a lot on social media. Social media has brought a lot of attention to this. Yeah, next slide, please. And so there's Issa kind of watching. The excavator did move out. He let them know that they're being reported. They moved out while he was watching, and then as we went to his house to eat lunch, they moved back in and just started digging again. Next slide, please. And so this is walking up to Issa's house, and this is what is surrounding his house, because just on the other side of that fencing and kind of barricade, you can see really anything they can use to protect themselves. There's a settler living on the other side who throws rocks at him nearly daily, yells at him, throws trash over, really, again, anything they can do to make daily life miserable, expecting for Palestinians to get tired and move along. Next slide. So this is Issa's lovely porch, again, surrounded by fencing because he needs to protect himself. If you look him up on social media, you'll see some videos, actively settlers yelling, throwing rocks, being violent towards him. But he hosted us, he made us a wonderful lunch. We all sat out there and there's me taking notes vigorously, trying to record all of the things he was teaching us. He was very generous with his time. Issa became an activist when he was in college. He was attending, I'm going to mess up the name of the university, so I won't say it. But he was attending college, and Israel military just moved in and blockaded the doors, and students were not allowed to enter again, and he was not going to be able to finish his degree. So he organized other students, and they protested. They found ways to resist, and ultimately they did get access to the university again through those actions. And so that fueled him to move forward and keep resisting. He also formed a group called Youth Against Settlers, and he's been working ever since. But that's come at a price. Issa has been arrested multiple times. He's suffered a lot of violence, including sexual assault while in jail. And that we learned as a standard practice now. It used to be just a couple, I won't say a couple, but it used to be more rare, but now it's just kind of a standard practice as a way of demeaning Palestinians who are put in jail. You can imagine culturally and just physically how awful that would be. So it is a standard practice now, unfortunately. Okay, you can move on. And then Issa took us into Hebron, and we went to the Old City, which required us to go through another checkpoint. And you can see, there's some trash around. That's because in a lot of the places that we visited, the ground level shops and marketplace are owned by Palestinians, and tourism is a huge part of their economy. But settlers have moved into the upper levels, some forming schools there, and they throw trash, garbage, sometimes urine, down onto Palestinian marketplace to try to ruin their business and, again, force them to move. Next slide. And so this is one of the first shops that we came to, Bader Al-Tamimi. He's got on the left here, it's hard to see, but up on the top shelf is a picture of his grandfather, who also owned that marketplace, and he's the head of tourism there at Hebron. He loved inviting us. Everybody was very happy to see us and very happy to show us their culture. They would invite us in, offer us tea, show us their traditional wear. It's a great picture of Luke. But in the center, I want to show you, so Hebron is one of the oldest cities in the world. And it's a UNESCO Heritage Site and UNESCO's United Nations Education, Science, and Culture Organization. And it's such a site because it was a hub of trade and cultural exchange, dating back thousands of years. And it's very hard to wrap your mind around thousands of years. But his family, for instance, has owned that shop for generations and generations. Yeah, you can get the next slide. So as we walked through the marketplace, we just saw barrier after barrier. They're trying to choke the marketplace. They shut down major streets that would go in and out of the marketplace. You can no longer drive through there. You have to walk. Again, these fences full of trash, thrown down by settlers. In the middle there, we're looking up at the netting that they put up to protect themselves from that trash coming down. But everyone that we met there was just so grateful to have us, and so eager to show us their wares and what they had to offer. Next slide. And one of those, just as another form of resistance, as Zach talked about existing, and Pam, existing is resistance for them. They are keeping their culture alive. And so there used to be I think, over 20 glass blowers in Hebron, and Hebron is known worldwide for their glass making. Now there is one in Hebron, and only a handful in Palestine. And we got to meet Jacob and see his glass blowing setup. They make it from recycled glass, and again, known worldwide for this, but it's a culture that's cultural art that's dying out, unfortunately. Next slide. And that's his traditional oven for heating up the glass and where he does his glass blowing. So it's a very important form of resistance, maintaining these culturally important arts to pass on so they're not lost forever. Next slide. And so yeah, it looks all but shut down. Of course, we were visiting after the Iran war started. There are no tourists there normally. These streets are full of people visiting. But not only because of that, but because of the barriers they've put in place. So Isa on the left is pointing toward a blockaded street. They can pop up. They're changing daily. I actually reached out to Isa today to see what was the update, because I've heard several things happening in Hebron since we left on June 22nd. And the Israeli forces have taken over control of the Ibrahimi Mosque, which I think next slide. This was the entrance, so just another checkpoint on the way to this really important religious site. Next slide. But the Ibrahimi Mosque is important to all Abrahamic faiths. It's Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all hold this as a pilgrimage site. Another reason why it's that World Heritage Site, and why Hebron is so fought over. So they have taken over control of entry and exit. I mean, you saw us go through the checkpoint to get here. But now they're restricting Palestinians from going in and worshiping as well. We're allowing more settlers to go in and worship. Which the mosque is divided in half after this massacre that happened in 1994. There's the Hebron Accords, an agreement that was put in place, even though it was an American-Israeli terrorist that was the one guilty of this massacre. Israeli actually ended up controlling it. Israel ended up controlling it for, again, security purposes. Everything's under the guise of security. Next. There's us in the mosque. And so, yeah, he did say that the whole agreement, so their Smoltrich, the Minister of Finance, has said that it is null and void now. It remains to be seen if that's going to be the case or not, but as far as Isa told me, it is. You know, he's living in Hebron, and it is the case. That's how things are being carried out now. He also said that there are now curfews, Fridays and Saturdays, that control is just ever present, ever increasing, day by day. Next. And so it's how Hebron is controlled, that this Hebron Accord that happened since that massacre, they divided. So it appears that, Palestinian civilian control is over 80% of it, and Israeli is controlling 20%. But those borders are changing all the time, and the amount of control is changing all the time. And the most important, so the old city and the mosque is in the H2 zone. Next. And then I had to sneak in this one slide. This is separate from our trip to Hebron, but we did have a day to kind of explore on our own, and Keith arranged for Usama Nicola to take us on a hike. We went through a valley, we saw lots of beautiful nature sites, and one of the last places we stopped was here, visiting the oldest tree in the West Bank, at around 5,000 years old. And it was a wonderful, beautiful day, a change from seeing kind of the hard living that they have to do. And this man, Salah, is the caretaker of this tree, and it's an honor for him to be dubbed that from his family. And they've cared for this tree generation after generation. So This was just one of those inspiring moments. This trip, there was happy tears, sad tears, scared tears, all the tears. This was definitely one of the more magical moments. So I wanted to kind of part with you with that. Like it's a beautiful place, beautiful people. Everyone that we met was welcoming and hospitable, and they just wanted us to share their story. Next slide. But yet, on the other side of this tree, there's the wall, the encroaching wall that Israel has put up. And the last slide, just some takeaways that kind of impacted me. You know, obviously everyone on our trip was there because we wanted to do something about this situation. What can we do? And they cannot give us, here, just do X, Y, and Z. But one thing that was clear is changing our politics is the answer to changing their situation because of our connection, our support of Israel as a nation through tax money, through our politicians who take money. So the resistance that we can do here that should be done to protect our own community and keep our own cultural diversity alive is what is going to make the difference for them as well. So we are connected and we can make a difference. What we do here has ripples around the world, and that was very obvious to me. I mean, the Iran war shut down tourism in not only where we were visiting, but also in Jordan. All countries in the Middle East are suffering because of that. So it was a good reminder not to wallow in my own despair, and that because they have hope and they have had hope throughout this entire time, I should absolutely have hope and work on that hope, and we all should. So thank you very much.
They say best for last, so I'll try not to disappoint you guys. My name's Luke, and I'll be talking about Ramallah. So Ramallah is just south of Jerusalem, or just north of Jerusalem, I mean. And we only spent one day here, and it was by far my favorite place we went. I wish we could have stayed the whole 2 weeks. It was just a beautiful city. On the right here we have a Nelson Mandela statue, and this is really symbolic because Nelson Mandela, a lot of you guys know him, one of the most famous revolutionaries. He went through apartheid in South Africa, and this is a very similar situation. He lived apartheid in South Africa. He helped stop it. He was the former president of South Africa, and this is a quote by him. "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." This is him recognizing that the situation in Palestine, what they're going through, what Israel is doing to them, is the same as what happened in South Africa. And in South Africa, the entire world eventually recognized, hey, this is bad, we need to stop this. So it's very symbolic, and Ramallah, you get there, and it was the very end of the trip. We had been through Bethlehem, Hebron, all these places where it's run down. You really see the effects of Israeli occupation and what it's doing to people. And Ramallah, you get there, and it's like I saw hints of Fort Wayne, and it reminded me a lot of Fort Wayne, and it shows you what it could be. Like a lot of people in America think it's just like, oh yeah, there's just a bunch of terrorists over there. They all like, if they are given the chance to live, like they just want to live like in a normal society. If they're given the chance, they're just gonna live peacefully. And Ramallah is a perfect example of that because they have a lot of political ties and recognition from different international groups that gives them a little bit of a shield from all the other effects that Jericho and Hebron might go through from the Israeli government. They can't really get away with as much stuff. But even before we were going to the Nelson Mandela statue, we were supposed to go to another cultural site, but they had a demonstration there. The Israeli military had a demonstration there. They surrounded this block and they were throwing tear gas, so we couldn't go there. So even in a protected place like Ramallah, you still see huge effects of the occupation. So next slide, please. Okay, on the right, or I'll start with on the left. Me and Zach, just were like, oh, we're just gonna walk around. We're only there for one day, so we're just gonna walk around the town, see what's up. So we found this little like heritage center, like little museum thing, and we were just checking it out. And this dude on the left, he's the owner. I forget his name. I'm sorry, but he invited us in for tea, and super nice, super nice, and was just talking to us. And he's a Christian, and he was born in Palestine. He's been living there his whole life. It was his family's house. He converted it, and he's got all these historical things about how Palestinians used to live. So, through the occupation, that stuff lives on, and it's really great. So we talked to him a lot, and it was interesting. He had been to the U.S., and one of the things he said is he sees what normal life is like. He sees what it's like to have freedom. He said in Palestine, he was born in the 70s, his whole life he has not had a normal day like we've had in America. His entire life he has not had one normal day. His entire life has been under occupation. He hasn't had rights. He's been tormented, prosecuted. Family members have gotten hurt, killed. All this stuff, his land's been taken. His entire life. That's what he's lived his entire life. So when he visited America, he was here for a couple of weeks, and he's like, he sees parks. He said one of the greatest things he saw in America was our public parks where you can just kids will just go there and play basketball. Like, it's so crazy. Like, I know it's not about Ramallah, but in Al Rawad Cultural Center in Bethlehem, they had that sports center Zach talked a little bit about. Actually, the Israeli government put that under demolition order. So that's going to get destroyed. They just wanted to destroy it. So eventually that'll get bulldozed. But it's just something like just everyday things that we take for granted. These people don't have to. They do anything for it. And this guy going through all this his whole life wants nothing more than peace. Like, he has every reason to hate this government, hate these people, and just want them gone. But he just wants to live in peace with everyone else. And this is how Palestinians are. They just want peace. Most hospitable people I've ever met. I mean, it's crazy how you could ever hate these people. On the right here these are me and my boys. It's pretty funny, these guys. So they have the same name. Both of our names Fuad, and they're both cousins, and they both work at a bank. So it's like they're doppelgangers. So it's pretty hilarious. I think they're the same age too, if I recall. But we went to the church. The reason we were in Ramallah is we went to this church, and we had dinner with a bunch of members of the church, and spoke to Munter Isaac. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we sat down with these guys, and immediately they're talking to us. They're talking our ears off. I mean, I felt like I'd known these guys my whole life. By the end of the night, we were just all friendly, and it was awesome. So I've kept in touch with them. But another example of how friendly the people are over there. They don't care what your background is, race, religion, doesn't matter. They love everyone. It's really beautiful. Next slide, please. So on the right here, these are all kind of the youngins of the church. I was like me and Zach were the two youngest there, so they were kind of flocking around us. But it was awesome. We danced. We did a bunch of stuff. They cooked food for us, so it was just a great time. And this kind of puts it into perspective of all the different backgrounds we have in Palestine. Like, a lot of people think, like, with all the Islamophobia we have in the United States, a lot of people think, oh, it's, just a bunch of terrorists, a bunch of Muslims and stuff. Like, there's Jews, there's Muslims, there's Christians, and they're all living here in harmony under this occupation, and they just want peace. And so it's really, the picture that's painted from the United States is just, it's all wrong. And so that's what Mother Isaac, he's the real reason we were in Ramallah. He really, really, really connected with me when we talked to him. So he talked about the idea of Christian Zionism. Now, if you don't know what Zionism is, it's the belief that Israel is meant for only Jews and all Jews. So if you're a Jew, you should be living in Israel, and the only people that should be living in Israel are Jews. And that's why the Palestinians have been kicked out of their own land, because they're not Jewish. So he talked to us about the true meaning of Christianity, following Christ, loving your neighbor, filling other people's cup. Now, I wouldn't really say loving your neighbor is murdering them, occupying their land, ethnically cleansing them, kicking them out, torture, like constant surveillance, building walls, restricting access to basic human needs. When we were in Bethlehem, they didn't have running water for 3 weeks. So people were running out of water, showering with water bottles, so it's just not Christian. To say you're a Christian and be a Zionist, that's not possible. That is just simply not possible. So it's disgusting, it's blasphemous to even have those two words in the same sentence, and that is one of the biggest problems we have is you got these pastors that are quoting the Bible saying, this is the chosen land for them. God chose us. Like it's all wrong. If you just go to the fundamentals of Christianity, everything they're doing is completely wrong. So we need to get rid of this idea of our duty as Christians to support Israel, because that's the farthest thing from the truth. Next slide, please. Thanks, Jeff. So.
Are you going to leave plumbing and become a pastor?
Maybe after this, I don't know. I wanted to end on this because, talking to you guys, that's an impact, but really, I wanted this presentation, I didn't want to just be like, oh, look what I did, guys, super cool over here. Like, I want to make an impact. And you guys are that impact, and you guys talking and doing things after what you've seen here is an impact. That is the biggest impact any one of us can have, is changing your life, your daily life. And I put these on here because these aren't hard things. I'm not going to ask you to donate money or change your habits. Like, this is pretty basic stuff. First one is the BDS movement. Okay, they specialize in targeting different companies that support Israeli infrastructure and like the settlements, different businesses that support the Israeli settlements. So this kind of keeps their economy afloat, and they target these different companies. So when we boycott them, that's a direct impact on the Israeli economy, which we love that. We don't want the Israeli economy to do good. You'll see a lot of companies on there. I mean, you got Xbox, Disney Plus, like HP, and this isn't everything. How are you ever gonna stop all these things? Because the world today, technology, we're gonna be. I mean, this is probably on a Dell computer. You know what I mean? So it's not really that easy. But I'm just asking that in the future, maybe before you make a big purchase or you recognize one of these companies, maybe a couple of you guys will cancel Disney Plus, binge all the shows before your subscription runs out. I don't know, maybe switch to PlayStation. So There's a couple things you can do to make an impact. Next one I wanted to talk about was track APAC. So this one is going to be shocking. I was completely shocked when I visited this website how many politicians take money from APAC. If you guys don't know what APAC is, it's the American Israel PAC, right? They fund politicians, campaigns, and in return, those politicians pass legislation supporting Israel that continues our funding of Israel and our support of Israel. I don't know if you guys keep up with politics, but El Said in Michigan, yeah, he just won the Democratic nomination. So that's a sign that, you know, even with all the money, I mean, she did the most funded campaign from AIPAC of all time, and she still lost, Haley Stevens. So people are catching on. People are catching on, which is great. And this is a perfect way you can look at this, because it's not a left or right thing. It's not a Democrats or Republicans. Both sides, you know, they argue all the time, but this is the one thing both sides have in common. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can send money to Israel. Everything else, we hate each other, but, you know, killing children, let's send them our money. So, before you vote, all I ask, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but before you vote, just check this. You guys will be surprised. You'll see a lot of people on here you either plan on voted for in the past, or, you know, just had recently seen. I mean, you could agree with every single piece of legislation someone has, and then, you know, oh, you see that red number, you know, $500,000 from AIPAC, that's a sign. So, and don't get it twisted. There's a lot of politics today, but this issue isn't political. Okay, children's lives aren't political. The human rights, it's not political. This isn't. I don't want to make this a politics thing. I hate how it got political, but it's really just basic human rights, and it shouldn't be talked about in that way. So, last thing, and I think this is the most effective, right? So what I'm doing here today is, this is a picture of Gunther Isaac saying silence is complicity, okay? So all of you here today, you guys know the truth now, or at least a fraction of it, I hope, and you can just go on with your normal lives. Maybe you'll vote, you know, maybe you'll go home, you know, throw away your HP or something. You won't drink Coca-Cola anymore, but the biggest impact you can have is having those uncomfortable conversations, okay? Talking to your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, your family. Even if you know what their opinion is already, talk to them. Please, please, please have these conversations. This is how we change. This is how El Sayed won, all right? This is how we spread the word, all right? You might not think it's making a big impact, but trust me, if everyone here talks to someone, even if you change one person's opinion, it doesn't matter. You can talk to 100 people, change 2 people's opinion, it doesn't matter. You're making an impact, and that's the biggest impact you can have, okay? So, all these things, don't go to spend a dime. You can do them. So, go out there and do them. Sorry, we went a little over on the presentation, but yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to invite our speakers to come forward. We've got time for 4 or 5 questions from all of you, and we'll try to be economical with our responses. And who would like to ask the first question? Yes, please.
Okay, I was a little confused. So Israel is Jewish, not the Jewish Palestinians also. So why is this so much hate between the 2 Jewish people?
Could you say that one more time, please?
There's Jewish Israelites and there's Jewish Palestinians, right? Why are they fighting so much? It's the same religion.
The problem isn't Judaism. The problem is Zionism. Zionism is this racist belief that Israel is meant for only Jews, and if you can only live there if you're Jewish. So Judaism is its own religion. You know, you can be Jewish and because there's actually a lot of Orthodox Jews that are very, very, very against this occupation, protest all the time in Israel. But the difference is there's Jews and there's Zionist Jews. The Zionist Jews only want Jews in Israel. So there's the two conflicts. Judaism in itself is not the problem. Zionism is the problem.
Next question. Please, Mary.
Well, you didn't go to Galilee?
We did not. No, we stayed in the West Bank this year.
Oh, okay. Are things better in Galilee or they just the same?
Well, the Galilee's in Israel, and we decided in this trip to stay completely in the West Bank because we wanted to make it Palestinian-centric. So we didn't go into Israel at all.
Oh, okay. It's all in the same.
Yeah.
Are any of you going to be speaking at any of our universities?
I'm only a volunteer once in a while. So it's fine. I only volunteer once in a while.
Hello?
I'll just say I'm not scheduled to. I don't think anybody is. If you have any connections and you'd like us to speak, please do. If you any organizations that are open to hearing about this trip, about this message, I think you can let any of us know. We'd be happy to speak.
I'm just curious, maybe especially Pam, and I'm sorry I forgot your name. When you were at intensification, has the settler outpost, has it increased? And what does that look like now?
Asking about the settler presence and if it's increased or stayed the pace, whatnot. So the settler, there's an outpost now on the edge of the property. In fact, the cave that I stayed in was right next to it. And it's actually against Israeli code and law to build that close to another person's property. One night there was drones that were flying around. You can't do stuff by yourself. And even Dowd was afraid that they were listening to, so you had to keep it down at the break area, if you will. So yeah, it's increased. I think there's like 7 settlements now surrounding the farm. The free day, the first Sunday we were there, there was a checkpoint that closed off the access from Route 60. So you had to go around through Nahalim and another village. And when we came back from Hebron, they had moved the checkpoint right to the entrance of the farm. So it's only a matter of time probably before they figure out how to, they're just slowly encroaching. So things gotten worse. The presence is definitely increasing.
When I was on the Solidarity tour last year, when we were at Tent of Nations, there were 7, I think, caravans on is that correct? Do you remember, Sarah? There were maybe 7 caravans. Honey, 7 caravans that.
Can you hear me?
So, there are 7 caravans. Okay, let's try this one. Is this any better? We'll try it. They're like prefab housing, and they just move them there, and that's how they establish but there's a word before that, but it becomes a settlement, an outpost. And an outpost then becomes a settlement once they start living there. And once they set an outpost, then once they have a settlement, then they need protection, and that's when the Army comes and protects them. But when I was there in April, and probably Heath too, maybe even more. By then there were 15 of those caravans set up, and daily they were bringing in big truckloads of gravel to like level the area so they could bring more in, and they were finishing them so that people were living in them. And by the end of my time there, at the end of April, they were living in them. So it's a bright light shining right onto the Nassar property.
The bulldozers now right outside the fence, and they bulldozed the road right up to the fence. And so Daoud is very concerned that within the next year or two, those of you who have been with me, you can picture it, back by the commodes, and they're concerned that within the next year or so that the road is going to be built separating the 100 acres into two parts, and so just separating the land and keeping them from half of their land, stealing half of their land.
Michael, where are these settlers from?
They're from Eastern Europe. They're also from the States. You know, the most rabid settlers, of course, are from the United States and from Russia.
Is it true that they give them the federal government helps them financially?
Yeah, over $200,000 to settle in. Yeah, so they get a stipend when they come from abroad to settle in Israel, and most often now the settlers, the most rabid ones, settle in Palestinian homes or on Palestinian property.
I can't afford a $250,000 house, but my tax dollars is going.
Well, yeah, and as a matter of fact, I was just in touch. Forgive me I know we've got other hands. There's a group in Indianapolis, Jewish Voice for Peace in Indianapolis that's working with a group called Break the Bonds, and you could buy. You don't want to do this, but there's a number of organizations in the United States now where you can buy Israeli bonds. In fact, Governor Braun and Indiana have invested millions of dollars in Israeli bonds, and so part of this Jewish Voice for Peace movement is talking about breaking the bonds. That is to get Indiana and other states too, other Jewish Voice for Peace groups, to divest from Israeli bonds. But in New York, there's a movement there's a group called Regavim, where you can donate to Israeli settlements with tax-deductible money. So you can make a tax-deductible donation in New York and other states to Israeli settlers. And so this is it's ubiquitous around the country, different organizations. And if you do get a hold of $250,000, make Indiana Center for Middle East Peace your first contribution.
How heavily armed are the settlers?
How heavily armed are the settlers? Very heavily armed, and they walk around with their pistols and with their machine guns, and they walk all through the farm. I mean, it's not just the farm, but throughout now. And in fact, those who you can't tell whether they're settlers or whether they're retired military or whether they're in the military, because many of the settlers who are reservists or who are veterans maintain their military uniforms, and so they will wear their uniforms even as reservists or as veterans.
Is it not true that the Israeli government has also armed some settlers?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yes.
Did you guys find out the situation on the strip? Is that getting better or would it be worse?
Could you repeat that, please?
The situation on the Gaza strip, is that getting better or is it getting worse?
Getting worse. It's getting much worse. Yes, sir.
Yeah, from the position that there is something that there was a problem with
Yeah, we'll repeat the question.
Yeah, there was a problem with the people actually planting their own too. That like they planted too much, like somebody was getting control of forage and stuff. You have a problem with that, right? Like looking at the land and And,
Yeah, you're getting at, if there's, if the vegetation gets too thick.
right.
Yeah. So they gotta keep things maintained and trimmed to a certain extent, so.
Or the government would like take it over?
Yeah, so there's like 4 subsets of different laws over the years that they've got.
And exactly which government is that involved with, like, who's like taking that over if they work?
Israel, yeah.
So that's Israel, like, actually taking over?
They're the ones
their land.
enforcing the different laws.
And so, like, because that's like the basis of you know, plant food under Israel. Feed is a basic human right that nobody should ever be taking from anybody. So, like, who in our government do I fight against to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody over there? Is my question, because that is a serious concern. Because I've lived on homesteaded farms and stuff like that. I'm homeless right now. That kind of like taking away of that right is the biggest right to take away.
Yeah, so the APAC thing is what I'd recommend you
Okay.
to point you in the right direction. I didn't go into it, but the olive trees and all the fruit, you know, all the fruit that they were growing there has repeatedly been encroached on and damaged and burned and whatnot.
And by the way, that's what's happened in Gaza too, because a lot of the fields have been destroyed or poisoned. Yeah. You think?
I'll just say something about that issue. Similarly, is also the water situation. We're told that Palestinians can't dig their own wells on their own land, and that the way to tell the difference between a Palestinian house and an Israeli house or settlement is to look at the roof. And the Palestinians will have water tanks on their roofs to collect the water, because either they cannot dig their own wells, or the Israeli government controls the water supply and will take the water, a lot from the Jordan River, which is a huge issue right now, and sell it back to them at 4 times the rate they sell the water to the Israelis. So it's the food, it's the water, it's the whole self-determination.
Please.
Mentioned that there's no parks, and there's no communities. I cannot imagine what it would be like. Thank you for the picture of the sunset over that body of water. To not be able to touch that body of water, I'm a swimmer. Swimming is health, like Otter swims a mile a day. We just destroyed the pool at the East Wing. But did anybody see a swimming pool the entire time we were there?
So in Bethlehem, I think one of the reasons they cut off the water for 3 weeks was because the settlers wanted to fill up their swimming pools because it was that time of year. So in Palestine, you will not see a swimming pool, but in Israel settlements or just in Israel, you will see lots and lots of swimming pools.
I'm curious, some of you guys mentioned the surveillance. What's that part of it like in different areas?
Maybe repeat the question.
So you asked about the surveillance and what it's like. So pretty much Palestinians, there's cameras everywhere. Everything they're doing is being watched. The police are constantly watching them. But when they want to use the surveillance to say, hey, the settlers on my land, actively, vandalizing it, like we saw the settlers trying to tap into the water spring, they'll call the police, they'll look at the cameras, and they'll say, we don't see anything. And you see the camera directly pointed at them, and they'll be like, we don't see anything. Sorry, can't do anything to help you. But if they go back and, fill in that dirt, then they'll look at the security footage and be like, oh, we see you doing this. So it's completely one-sided, and they only use it to discriminate against Palestinians.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
If, so there's the cameras. Have you talked to people there that were like, there are other things like listening to?
Yes, audio is a huge thing. They'll listen to everything you're doing and pick up on those conversations, and they will put you in jail. They'll torture you. They'll arrest you for anything you say or do that's caught on camera, but only if you're Palestinian.
When we were in Hebron, I took a picture of, I was standing in one of the souks, the shopping areas, and we were spread out. We had 10 or 15 minutes to just look in various shops, and I took a picture of, and in the distance, some soldiers on a rooftop. And right as we were leaving, one of those soldiers came down and asked me to delete the picture from my camera. And this was, you see, Kate, wave your hand. So it was from me 3 times to Kate 2 more times on a rooftop. And so the surveillance is, and, you know, I've been there 40 times. So, you know, I mean, I'm pretty savvy about these things. So I thought I was, you know, undercover or in good shape. Well, not so much, Mike, you know. So that answers your question. And as he said, and Pam said, on Dawood's farm, we were told, maybe just talk in hushed tones because the listening device is on the other side of the fence. We have time for maybe one more question, please.
So, in Israel, are children being educated to carry out the
Yeah. So the question was, is in Israel, are children being taught to carry on the hatred, basically, of Palestinians? And we learned, I'm blanking on his name. Sumi Awad, thank you, who has had a lot of, he's got a great book about it, but he said he went to Auschwitz. He wanted to learn about where the trauma is coming from, and he went there to kind of see what could be done to heal the trauma, because that's really, you know, he thought the heart of where all this violence and fear is coming from. And he saw school groups being taught, you know, do you see how awful the Holocaust was? Palestinians will do the exact same to us if we give them the chance. And so they are teaching children that from a young age. And so it's very normalized to hate Palestinians in their culture.
Let's say thank you to our 5 friends, our 5 collaborators.